Hey everybody, thank you for listening to Filling in the Gaps. Be sure to check us out on our social media pages at Filling in the Gaps. From there you can get updates on show releases and anything special we may be doing. Sit back and enjoy the show. Should be a lot of fun.
All right, everybody, welcome out to another episode of Filling in the Gaps. If it's your first time, Filling in the Gaps is a brainstorming podcast where myself, Rich from the heartland state of Ohio, and my good friend Cam from down in Texas, over the course of an hour, will take a random theme and a random scenario and mash them into something that we hope will spark an idea for you to use during your next game night. We know that DMing and coming up with ideas every week can be hard, so we're here just to have some fun, brainstorm, and hopefully make being a DM just a little bit easier. Cam, we have an awesome group of people over on our Discord who have been killing it this week. I've been watching. Mole is the one who started. Mole is the one who started a Twitter account where he brainstorms stuff all the time too. That's
D&D Annex actually is what it's called. Yes, go follow that if you want some fun, crazy ideas. Mole seems to be a robot. I'm pretty positive they're not a human. I know that much. Because
a good robot, though.
Because Mole is pumping out these ideas at a rate that I have never been able to comprehend. It's just like, wow, that was a really cool idea. And then 20 minutes later, it feels like there's a new tweet. And it's like, oh, that's a really funny idea. That's a really cool thing. He even took on the challenge of saying, if you like this tweet, I will legitimately create an item specifically for you based off your profile, based off your name. And I was like,
that's
no
awesome
way.
Oh, give this guy a follow.
And he did he straight up like was going nuts, and I was like, this is amazing. So that's a must follow over there on Twitter. So there you go, Molly, I'll give you a little shout out, bud.
And it's D&D Annex.
Yes,
D&D Annex on Twitter. Awesome. Also, a cool thing I found this week that you guys might like, me and Cam were talking about before the show, is World Anvil. Plug it into Google, World Anvil. It's a free world building software. It gives you tools like a timeline you can mess with. You can insert maps. It essentially helps you create, your world binder that every good DM is supposed to have. And I definitely have not in one binder, but in 5, and then I've lost all of them. But it helps you compile them all in one place, and it looks cool, and your players can go and look through it. So if you like having something like that, it's the coolest tool I've seen for free that you guys can hop on and use. Looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, to me, it's any bit of tools that you can have at your disposal. When I go to work every day, I am constantly just packing my truck filled with as many tools as possible, because you're always just going to be prepared. You're always ready to go.
Yep.
Like, for example, one of my favorite tools is this piece of paper that I've got in my truck, and it has a list of all these different words and phrases. My favorite phrase at the very top of it is, shall we roll?
Let's do it. Okay, so for any of you guys who are new to the podcast, what we are about to do is I'm going to take my D20 that is currently housed with me up in Ohio. Cam will be taking his D20, currently housed with him down in Texas in a secret facility that we can't talk about. Yeah, and we're going to be each rolling. I, this week, am rolling for our scenario. So we could be catching a thief, closing a portal, time traveling. Cam will be rolling for our themes, such as Candyland or Cloud Kingdom, Tundra. And once we get these two things, we mash them together, and that's the next hour of brainstorming that we provide to you. Cam, are you ready?
I am ready.
That was a pre-roll, just a little warm up.
Yeah.
All right.
You ready to do this?
Let's do it for real.
All right.
Natural 20.
Damn, really? I was actually thinking about that one for you. I was one off. I had a 19 on mine.
Ooh, okay. So, while you go ahead and get ready to read these off, let me go ahead and tell our fans what these two dice rolls are brought to us by. And I'm getting all mysterious today because I need to let you guys know. I'm going to pull back the veil a little bit. You ever want to be in the in crowd? Yeah, well, guess what? We here at Filling in the Gaps, we can get you in. You ever heard of a guy called Matt Mercer? Yeah, you ever hear of this guy? It's kind of a big deal. Well, guess what? The other day, he shouts out a business. What business? the business that sponsors our podcast, Libris Arcana Dice. Yeah, if you like dice, what do you think about that, Jack or Jackette? I don't know who you are, but hopefully you're enjoying your time so far. If you like dice and you'd like a random set of dice to be sent to your house every month, then you can use our promo code FITG for 25% off your first month's order. So you can either get one 8-piece set of dice sent to your house every month, or you can get 3 sets of dice sent to you every 3 months, and you can get 25% off your first order with our promo code. Save yourself some cheddar so you can buy some more dice with that, and you'll have a good time. Tell them that we sent you because you heard that Matt Mercer also sent people there, but that we sent you, not him. We did, but we also really like him. If you can type that all into special notes, they'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, that's actually what he said. That entire statement he said was our promo code. So make sure to rewind and listen.
And get that
whole
whole
it's about 3
thing.
sentences long. Yeah, the entire thing. You could also use our other promo code FITG as well.
Either one.
Either one. Either one. It's up to you. We aren't here to just sort of control you. We're here to provide you wonderful stories, and our stories will be brought to us today by our wonderful friend Joel. Joel.
Are both of these his idea?
Yes.
All
and
right.
let me tell you, it was a pretty funny one on the second one. The scenario itself is filling in the gaps to an old legend while being on a flying castle.
Okay. So what is the filling in the gaps to an old legend? What does that mean? Like, we have an old legend and they've got to find the answer to it or create it?
Well, I guess that's sort of our job here.
Okay, that's our job.
To sort this. Yeah, I mean, no, actually, this is the end of the episode. Everybody, good luck. We are proud of you. We think you can do this.
We'll see you next week. You guys are on your own this time.
Bye. Okay, so let's start with just some brainstorming. Let's figure out what kind of things do you think of. First off, let's think of Flying Castle.
Okay.
Themes are always a good way to start, I would say.
I agree.
So when I think of Flying Castle, I legitimately think of just a giant castle flying through the air magically in some way or another, but it's relatively aerodynamic and it has some relative shape that allows for that as well.
Yeah.
But what examples do you think of when it comes to a flying castle?
Okay, so me and my friends used to play Heroes of Might and Magic all the time when we were growing up. It's kind of like a city builder / tile combat game, and in that game, the wizards would have cloud castles. So that's what always immediately pops into my mind is all of these towers, kind of this suspended chunk of earth with clouds circling around it that has all these towers on it. Recently, I've been reading a series. I'm trying to find it on my shelf here. The author's name is Steven Erikson, and in his first book, Garden of the Moon, there's a wizard who lives in this flying city that he suspends with his own magic called, I forget what the wizard's name is, but his town is called the Spire. And there's this really cool combat scene where the Spire has just been floating over this other town for forever just because he's protecting it. And there's this eventual battle where the forces on the ground are shooting up at the Spire and knocking these things off of it. And there's all these huge crows that are flying off the Spire. And the wizard shooting his own spells down from below. And it conjures in my mind this really cool image of being under the shadow of this giant city as lasers and fireballs and spells are flying up and down. These giant crows that have just been so well fed by this wizard killing people below him are just swarming the air. So that's another thing I think of, depending on if you're going for more of a good flying castle kingdom or a bad flying castle kingdom. That's what pops into my mind.
I also was thinking about multiple castles.
Ooh, multiple
that
islands?
all fly. Yeah. It's it's almost as there's actually a movie coming out here pretty soon that looks really interesting, but it's essentially a bunch of castles all around the world that are just massive cities on wheels. And they're incredibly large cities or castles that are all riding around, and they're just pretty much tanks. But they're cities filled with thousands of people.
They're just so huge.
Yeah, they're massive, massive things. And so part of me thinks of this group of castles vying for control. And so then if we sort of segue into filling in the gaps to an old legend, what that makes me think of is, it sort of makes me think of what if these different groups or something like that are essentially trying to solve these portions of like maybe finding these extra pieces of runes that can complete an entire segment of an old legend, and once that old legend comes about, something magical happens to whoever completes it, or something like that.
Now,
does that make sense?
No.
Is that all?
No, I think I hear what you're saying. So it's like they're all trying to vie to get this, to collect this one powerful thing, and as soon as it happens, so along with that too, another thing that made me think of is Dark Souls. Did we ever play Dark Souls together?
No. I know people will hate on me for this. I have very little time inside of Dark Souls because I enjoy games that don't make me cry.
Gotcha. Yep.
Yeah,
I completely understand. Well, in the end of Dark Souls 3, so Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2, you're playing in these different kingdoms that are, thousands of years apart, maybe even longer. But in Dark Souls 3, in the very end, you're in this kind of world at the very end of time where all of these long-lasting kingdoms are kind of bleeding into each other, and you can kind of see them all on the horizon of this giant area.
Right.
And it's kind of the idea that they're all trying to, make it. I mean, there's a lot of people who are a lot more knowledgeable than me of the Dark Souls lore, so I'm sorry if I'm butchering this. But to me, I also like this idea of what you're saying. There's all these different kingdoms, and maybe we're in some kind of like world where, and I mean, outside of the material plane, there's tons of stuff that could happen. There could be maybe there's some kind of deity out there who takes every civilization when it's at its highest moment and creates an exact copy of it and puts it in this other world on its own flying, almost like his version of a collection of snow globes or something like that.
Correct.
So there's all these so there'd be like this huge kingdom from 100 years ago. There'd be this huge, like more of like a Mid-Eastern, or there maybe be like a Chinese type kingdom, a Dwarven kingdom, Elven. They're all floating around in space, and maybe you get pulled in and something happens because there's some shattering between the things keeping these kingdoms separate. So now they're in chaos and they're fighting, and maybe what you do is and this is maybe the filling in the gaps to an old legend, maybe you're even being sent there to try to do this. You somehow can interfere with time, or maybe interfere with, like you said, some kind of artifact that allows you to change a kingdom in this world so it changes it in another world. Well, go ahead.
I'm actually picking up what you're putting down here.
Okay.
And I like that because you always tickle my fancy when it comes to I know that's a weird term.
Coochie coo.
When it comes to like providing variance in terms of a story. And so it's like, oh, there's a dwarven world. So there's like different biomes, different sort of visual cues all the time. I'm a big thing on that. One thing that we have always done with our stories that I liked a lot is that we've centered around either specific monsters or specific bad guys or something like that. One monster that I've been sort of itching to do is giants.
Ooh.
And hear me out on this, but there could be a type of trial, and essentially you gain the knowledge of this old legend that provides you with a magical weapon at the very end. Let's say that's the end, right?
Okay.
In the beginning is, you're presented with this quest, like this trial of the four giants. And so what you do is you are essentially earning these runes that are pieces to a long sentence of an old legend. And so maybe it's like it doesn't even have to be words, but it could be. And essentially, like, as you earn them from the giants that you beat, you place them in place, and the entire sentence becomes more complete as you go on, until at the very end, you've turned it into one giant sentence. Then you are able to read the legend. It opens up something that provides your players with a gift. Each of these giants, exist on a different flying castle, essentially.
Okay.
And each of the flying castles are represented by storm or by the hills or something like that. And that's what I was thinking about in terms of like the overall story itself. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know if what your thoughts are on that, but that was definitely something that. Excuse me, I'm leaning away. I was like that could be interesting to me because we've got to play with that filling in the gaps sort of to a legend itself. And so if this isn't a known legend, and maybe this is a trial that they aren't necessarily not a lot of people have completed, then this is something that could be pretty cool overall. But what do you think about that?
No, I like that idea. I love giants too, because I think giants just invoke such a sense of that they're old, that they've been around, that they know things that a human wouldn't know because of how long them and their culture have been around. One thing that I think I might have heard it from, I forget his channel name, but he's the guy who does How to Be a Great GM. I think his name is Guy. Actually, he's British. I might have heard this idea for him where he talked about you go to this ancient relic site, and when you get there, it teleports you back in time during the moment of like a huge battle. What if it's even with the whole filling in the gaps to an old legend? I forget who I got this from. I think it was a guy on Reddit who said that at one point he had teleported his party back in time to the like genesis of the world, and they ended up becoming like the gods of the world because of how far back in time they were thrown. So what if there is this legend amongst the giants of these, and this could be a cool idea to make like a whole little short campaign around this. There's these like, giant kin, or these like little giants, or whatever they're called. Like something in this legend like talks about these 5 or 6 people who had a huge impact on giant kind, either positively or negatively. Kind of like Fable-esque, where like there's a hero who did stuff and he was awesome or evil. But
pretty much the plot.
Yeah, but that's
the exact plot, if I do remember it
of
correct.
Fable. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. But there's this legend that's so ambiguous. It just more talks about the impact that these heroes had than it does specifically what they did. And you kind of go and you get, sent back to these times. And then depending on, because I like the idea of this artifact, this sentence you're talking about, depending on what they do. And I like the idea of a trial too. Like maybe it's not even like that they have an effect on actual history. They just get sent to this trial room. They get sent to this trial moment. And like, let's say they go and they kill everything. Well, then that gets them a kill rune. But if they go back and they save everything or they persuade everybody, it gets them a different rune on this artifact. And the combination.
They build their own, they create their own legend. And at the end, you as the DM, you've sort of had these like different settings.
Yep.
That you can almost like tag their action, and then you build that sentence based off of those actions, and say they go through about 4 of them, and then that's their old legend, and that represents the thing that they receive at the end of the trials.
Exactly. And maybe
I do get it.
Yeah, and maybe it's even too. I like the idea. I think you said that's like they create their own legend, and maybe that's a thing for the giants. Is giants that's in at least the giants we're working with, they have this understanding of like, legends are, people will write legends about you looking back on your life, but you're the one who actually writes your legend through the way you live. And there could be this understanding of like, there's this old giant who's just like got this, long wispy beard, and he kind of just like looks at you and he says like, you're about to write your own legends, or let's see what legend you will write.
Right. I like the idea of almost presenting it to the players as if they think that they are going to complete someone else's legend, when in reality they're completing their own without the knowledge of it. And then once they get it, once they've finalized it, they realize, oh, that's us. Like, oh my God, that's us. And so that's sort of that time traveling side of things is pretty interesting to me. So how do we incorporate, before we start getting into, do you think we're on the right track with these guys? Like, I think Giants is a pretty good way to go about doing it. I think that they fit with the scenario of legend for sure.
Yep.
I think that you can break it up into a few different, scenarios with the different types of giants, which create different types of castles as well.
Yep.
But how do we incorporate those trials and maybe even some of that time travel with flying castles?
That's true. I had forgotten about the flying castle for a second.
Yeah.
I like
Gotta
the
give them love,
idea.
too.
Man, I really like the idea of wherever this place is, it kind of occurring. I mean, we could even just go with the whole reason they start this is because of a cloud giant. Because cloud giants themselves, like, they live in cloud castles. Like, so they live in the clouds. So this could be a thing where maybe they go and they do this, and it's a cloud giant who is the main quest giver. Or it's a cloud giant who even takes them Peter Pan style to this place.
Okay. Actually, yes. I actually love this. And so then the cloud giant can open different planes, and each of the trials is represented by 4 separate giants. And I love the idea of it being a fire giant, a frost giant, a storm giant, and a stone giant.
Mm-hmm. Fire.
And those 4 different planes, essentially. And so the players get to choose to go to each of those to create their own legend or find their legend, find that rune, and each of those is represented in a different either activity or scenario. And he says, once you completed all these, you place these runes in these places right here, and this is the reward you receive. And I also, he could also be evil, and it could actually do something really cool for him or crazy for him. You know what I mean?
No, I get what you mean exactly. I'm trying to think back to, I ran Storm King's Thunder at a local game store. I actually ended up making a lot of my own homebrew rules to it, kind of verging off the plot. So I'm trying to think if there's anything on there I could steal or use. I'm trying to think too, because I'd like this to all take place in this kind of flying castle world that you were talking about. Especially because, I mean, with a flying castle, you could do storms, you could do flying mounts, which aren't something that people get to do a lot, flying boats, even just hopping from island to island. Like, these are all things that you could do in a flying castle scenario that you couldn't just do on a walking on the ground area. So I'd like to keep true to that as much as we can. With
as
Mr.
opposed to exiting to different planes and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on board with you with that way more than using that sort of shortcut to get out of the castle. You know what I mean?
But honestly,
I think you're right.
It could be just as simple as maybe this flying castle I'm picturing as being this huge castle. Maybe it's just more of like a spire, like a rock or something like that. Like, this is a more like a traveling bookkeeper monk style cloud giant. So you're just kind of traveling around with him on his smaller cloud castle, but you get these flying castle scenarios of like flying in different biomes and storms and stuff like that from him taking you to these different biomes. So
are those different biomes represented by the different giants?
Yes,
possibly.
So he flies you to a volcano, and now you have to fly down to the ground as there's these. Maybe there are fire giants who are trying to fire at you with like these giant ballistas, and you're flying through smoke for cover, or there's an active volcano erupting.
I think we lean into the flying castle thing, and each of the giants has their own flying castle.
Ooh.
For example, he takes you to a volcano, and then floating in the center of the volcano above the lava is this floating fiery Bowser-esque castle, right? And then he takes you to dude, I love that. But then you go to an Arctic type of world or a tundra of some sort, and floating there, or ice picks have jut into the sky and are suspending this floating ice castle for the frost giant, and the storm giant is it could be a lot of different things, but that's what I'm sort of thinking about, is that each of these has their own castle, and each of them provides their own challenge or trial. And as this cloud giant is taking you around to each one, allowing you to face these tasks, that's what's happening essentially. Is that Are we on the same page in that?
No,
regard?
I think we're on the same page. And I think, too, even if we wanted to make it, like, not so much a full castle, because they're reliving these tales, they're making their own legends. It could even be just some kind of flying shrine that the giants have put up.
Okay. Yes.
With, like, runes and stuff.
Yeah.
So that way it's like we cloud giants helped all the other giants make theirs, so we retain the knowledge of how to get to them, even if the fire giants became too crude to be able to do it, or even if the hill giants are so dumb they forget that we built these for them, we still know where these trial points are at. But what if there's like a fail safe to keep them from getting too close together? And this is where the flying comes in, is once you get within a certain distance, like so many miles, like you can't just park right next to their island. There's some kind of barrier, there's some kind of, just like how every giant is different, so they kind of keep to their own biomes. Even these rune places, these testing points or whatever, there's some magic intrinsically keeping them far apart. So he's like, I'll get you as close as I can, but after that, you have to get yourself there the rest of the way.
Oh, yes. Okay. And then it's your player's job to traverse this new biome, and we'll use the Fire Giant, for example, and it's this brimstone world with ash and fire falling to the ground, and then they have to make their way to this floating rune, like this floating platform that has like spirals of maybe like lava that are pouring around each of the corners. And that's their first trial. And then the next one, the Frost Giant, it's a different scenario, but each time they're sort of braving the elements to get through to each of these things. And he's just the Sherpa of sorts.
Exactly. Yep.
The Cloud Giant.
And that's exactly what I was picturing. So like he pulls up, maybe there's, like you said, this always erupting volcano. So like it's just constantly pouring smoke up into the air, and he gets you so that you're like above the volcano, and he's like, okay, in the smoke of that volcano, you'll find a floating crag or a floating rock or a floating island. Like, once you get to it, you look for the shrine, you do this thing, and then you'll get teleported to your trial point. So whether they have a flying boat, like a flying ship, like a balloon ship, or whether they have flying mounts that they have, or if you're going super hard mode and they have to find a way to get up there, like through a chain that's linked to it, they have to figure out flying through this thick ash that like maybe there is a suffocation thing, so they have to adventure into it, or maybe there's volcano bats or something like that live in the smoke and they're fighting.
I'm completely picturing this now, and it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and then but
just to think about it.
But like you said too, there's a different chain. Like it's a blizzard for the Frost Giants. It's a hurricane or something like that for the Storm Giants. For the Stone Giants,
or boulders falling from into a crevice or something like that as they're trying to make their way, because these Stone Giants don't want them to sort of impede on their own land, and they seem very territorial. Okay, so then that's what we got, right? So I think that we're on the right track right there.
Yep.
Our main quest giver is a Cloud Giant. He's this jovial guy that wants to essentially help your players. But why does he want to? What's his motive towards helping them? What does he earn, or she, or whomever, it doesn't matter, out of what does the Cloud Giant earn by helping your players do this, right? They're not a genie, so they're not granting wishes. There's something that they benefit from. Is it that if you don't complete this trial, that maybe some of these boundaries start to break, and the magic from these boundaries start to break down, and over time this Cloud Giant has lost more and more of his brethren, and so they haven't been able to sort of hold these magical barriers in place as well as they have in the past, and so now they need your players' help to do so. Maybe is that something that could be, So
you're saying kind of like it's the survival thing, like someone has to go and perform the ritual.
Reenact this old legend essentially to create these strong barriers of magic, so that we don't have sort of an invasive species of giant take over, because there's always balance to life. They need balance within the world of the giants.
And I think that even right there sounds good. Like, this is a thing that has to happen, but obviously some of the giants maybe have forgotten about it, or maybe they don't care about it. Maybe they're too tied up in their own game, like games to do it. Or it could even be that, going back to the idea of like filling in the gaps to an old legend, maybe this giant just, because cloud giants are more, well, I guess they're not necessarily more extravagant. That was the one I ran in Storm King's Thunder, like more like a clock master type things where they just watch the world go. But I like the idea of maybe there is this cloud giant who he just travels around and he keeps his ear to the ground. He finds out about adventurers, and then, so he almost seeks out your party and is like, hey, I'm interested. You guys have made such an impact on this world, and I've seen this happen so many times with heroes. I want to see what type of heroes you'll become.
Right. Well, that actually plays into cloud giants because they view themselves as sort of the pinnacle of giants in the sense of like how they are perceived. They perceive themselves as the smartest of the giants and the most affluent of them all.
Yep.
And so that plays right into it because it's almost this mental game. It's almost like boredom for this cloud giant because he's finding himself like, okay, we need to sort of wrangle everybody up and get this thing rolling again.
Yeah.
And so that actually plays right into their personality, in my opinion.
Yep. And worst comes to worst, if you need a bad guy, like this could be the classic, I want to see what type of legend that you guys will make. And then at the end, he's like, ha ha ha, I had you this whole time fooled, and now all the altars have been activated, and I am the master of all giants. You could do something like that too, if you're looking for just like a bad guy to kill at the end.
Yeah.
But I do like the idea.
That actually could be a really cool thing.
Yeah.
That could happen too.
I like the idea of this being...
Because he can bring out the other giants too.
Yes. I like the idea though of this being kind of like because it even starts your players off on a good note because, at this point, maybe they're so high level, but they haven't had that official, someone hasn't told them like, hey, you're a big deal now. Like maybe they were level like 1, and now they're level like 6 or 7, and you still find them like killing guards and stuff like that. So maybe this giant steps in and he's like, hey, I need you to realize, like almost like a personal trainer moment or like a coach moment. Like he steps down from the clouds and he says, hey, I've been watching you guys. You guys have been making a bigger impact on this world than you might realize. Maybe he even like shows them like with like some kind of crystal ball or something. Like, hey, you guys didn't realize that when you did this happened, or when you did this happened. Like I keep an eye on all these possible futures, and you guys have been having this impact, and I want to see once and for all, what kind of impact are you going to make? So I'm going to send you on this trial where you write your future legend based upon these trials.
Yes. And they're all presented by the giants, and he says, this is your turn to finally prove yourself as more than just a man that fights men, but a man that fights the mythic.
Exactly.
And yeah. And it plays right into a cloud giant, right? Because at the same time, it's not too hard to believe that a cloud giant can look down upon a player to view their actions and understand what they have done and what they have been a part of.
Yep.
I mean, it's very simple. Physically, it makes a lot of sense.
Yep. And it's a good moment to have for all your players. It's a good moment for every adventuring party to realize, hey, we're not just
holy crap, this is what we've done.
Yeah, we're not just ho-hum people anymore. We have to understand that our characters are not the rat catchers they used to be. They are now power players. And it's a good moment for you to actually pretty much just say it flat out to them. Like, you guys are power players in the world today, and you should take that into account when you do things.
Right. So now let's talk about the events that can happen as the cloud giant starts to present them with these. What would you say? Would you say like the hill giant would be the first that they would approach, and what giants would you or would you not use in terms of these trials?
Well, honestly, you could do all the giants. Hill giants are the perfect like intro or tutorial. Like,
yes,
because it could just be that you're in this beautiful open pasture land where it's like always, a little bit cloudy. Sometimes it rains, but it's very mild weather. And you just like, there's nothing hard about getting there. You just fly straight there and you land, and then you're right into the trial. So the trial is what's the hard part for that island. That way you just get introduced to the idea of what the trials even are. And then for whatever island is next, it's like, okay, this one's going to be a little bit harder to get to than your last one. But they're already familiar with the trial, so that way it adds that little bit extra spice.
Yeah. And I like the idea, what if the Cloud Giant has the castle that, his floating castle, his like fortress that he floats around on, has some type of, shop or something like that the players can come back to after each of the trials. You know what I mean?
Well, I know most...
Like if...
you're saying the Cloud Giant?
Longer campaign. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I think for sure. Yeah. If not...
Because the Cloud Giants are like sort of known as like... They have a lot of wealth and they have a lot of trinkets and things like that. And so it's like, to me it fits really well with that whole aesthetic.
Yeah, he just like trades you
for
stuff.
them. What's that? Say it again?
He just like trades you stuff. He's like, hey, if you give me... Yeah, I think that sounds perfect.
Yeah. Because I want to make sure that we still have like that prominent castle of sorts, sort of your home base for these missions. But I was actually thinking about another cool event could be that the fire and the frost giants have started to get too close to one another. And so they're in a constant struggle for land and or space in the sky. And it reminds me, this is weird, but this reminds me of a Banjo-Tooie boss from way back in the day. There was I think it was like the Freezeezy Peaks or something like that. It's like one half of the map was completely frozen and one half of the map was completely lava. And then when you went to go fight the boss, you fought both this ice dragon and fire dragon at the same time.
What? See, I don't remember this. I don't think I got that far in Banjo-Tooie, but I love the idea of that. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, right. So finding yourself in the middle of this conflict between the fire and the ice, to me is a really interesting thing that could come about where, they have a platform, but half of the platform is frozen shards of ice and crystals. And the other half of the platform is this charred earth that's black and it has, lava flowing off the sides. And your players are trying to, what would the trials be actually? Now that I'm thinking about it, it's like, what are the trials? But like, because the hill giants they make a lot of sense to me. The hill giants go in, fight a hill giant, kick the shit out of him. I mean, excuse me, kick the heck out of him. Mm-hmm. I'll beep that out. My bad.
Oh, don't worry about
it. But as for the other ones, are they always battles or are they interesting? Like what are elementals a part of this now? Do we have fire and ice elementals that pop up, stone elementals?
I mean,
what happens in these different trials?
That's a really good question. I think it has to, of course, I don't know why I'm even saying this. It has to be tailored to the giants that are there. So I think it makes sense for a hill giant. I mean, what do hill giants like? Hill giants value size and strength above everything else.
Right.
So maybe for them, it's just, maybe the hill giant one is just as simple as you prove that you are bigger and stronger than whatever it is you're fighting, whether it's another hill giant or a few hill giants, whatever. For fire giants, they are more war-based and tactical. So maybe for the fire giants, this sounds weird. Maybe you play them at some kind of strategic board game, or it's more of like a war game more than anything else. Maybe for them, it's literally like you play some kind of war game where you're moving around troops and doing maneuvers like that. For frost giants, they're more about like pillaging and plundering. So maybe you take the route of trying to take over a city and how would you siege this town best? It's more of like a you give them options and you respond to their options. Like they don't play it out, but it's like, hey, there's this city that you have to siege. Like don't worry about the ethics of it, but how do you take over this city? And you give them a little bit.
I like the idea of like the storm giant being how do you maintain your will and your strength in the face of different types of storms, and they start to pelt your players with lightning and it's just sort of like a will test of sorts, like a test of the will of the players.
What if
all things considered?
I mean, this could even tie into the giants have this religious belief called the ordning, which is essentially the order of values intrinsically within giants. So I believe it goes hill giants are on the bottom, Then after hill giants is frost and fire giants. They're kind of tied. They go back and forth. Then I believe stone giants are above them. Then cloud giants, and then kind of reigning supreme over all the giants is storm giants. So what if the trials even have to tie into that type of structure too? Like you look at the base of a society. So for hill giants, what is the basis of the society in its basest form? Not base meaning good, but at its most basic, it's just violence. Then above that, you have.
I love that.
Yeah. Then above that,
I love that.
It's your tribe versus another tribe. It's fire giants and it's faction fighting. It's your squad tactics. Then above that, it's siege tactics, city versus city. Then all of a sudden, it's stone giants, and now it's art and it's beauty and it's some kind of like a poet.
Oh, okay, dude, that's awesome. That is so good.
Yeah.
That's really good. The ordning and it works perfectly because you can play this out in terms of each of the trials. It can just be taken care of one by one. And so, like, you go and do the fight with the hill giant, then you go and do the fire giant, but now it's, instead of fighting one giant, it's fighting for either giant kin, fire giant kin. I guess what's the fire kin?
Yeah.
Or what are they called again? The giant kin?
Yeah, giant kin.
Yeah. So they're like fire giant kin, if that's the best way, and it's matched to your party's numbers as well. And so then it's like, how do we tactically beat multiple people? And then for the frost giant, it's a siege, but his trial is these two massive forts essentially, and you are defending your fort and he's defending his, and it's almost like capture the flag, or it's take over the town center or the fort center, and if you're able to do that, then you've earned his respect. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is that sort of in line with what you're talking about?
Yeah, well, even for the frost giants, and I think this is the thing you could play out even later on with the storm giants. I was imagining it more as like a scenario. So it's kind of, maybe it's even just there's this rock giant or this frost giant head that, like, this giant frost giant head, to use the word giant a lot, that forms, and as it's talking, its shape changes into like the city. And it's like, okay, so imagine your trial is, how do you take over this city? And it gives you some things about, there's this many people in it. There's this many features. This has been what's happened. And then it's just like what is your first step in sieging the city? And your players like talk for a little bit, and they're like, okay, we're going to try to intimidate them into surrendering. So then he's like, okay, how do you, and you just kind of let them more role play it than anything else.
I like that, actually. Yeah. So that you're breaking up the monotony of combat
exactly.
as well.
Yep.
Right. I got you.
And it lets them think, they might never think about how to siege a city. So it just lets them be like,
that's actually a good idea.
And then for Storm Kings, I like that what you said about weathering the storms. Maybe at that point, since it's the top of society, it's like, hey, your thing no more. You're no longer trying to prove your strength. You have it. You're in charge of this empire. How do you keep this power when this happens? And it's just like I think something like this happened in Knights of the Old Republic, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. There's this like Sith holocron or something you open up, and one of the things it asks you is like, what do you do about I think actually it was kind of, I don't know if this happened before or after 9/11, but one of the questions like directly correlated to 9/11. It was like, if you knew that this tragedy was going to happen, but by you letting it happen, it would let your whole entire country unify under one cause, like, would you do it? And so a lot of people were like conspiracy theorying stuff that Star Wars,
that's interesting.
Star Wars did 9/11. But it's that kind of, you can just like, it's the last trial. You can just kind of rattle off like, this happened, like famine happens in your empire. Who gets the food?
TIE fighter fuel doesn't melt steel. Just to let you know.
Really?
So.
Man, I knew it.
I don't know if you've heard all those conspiracy theories about how plane fuel doesn't plane fire.
Yep.
I don't. It doesn't melt steel beams.
So it's like,
the other thing that I was thinking about was the stone giants, because you talked about how they're artistic.
Yeah. What'd you get for that? Because I blanked on that one.
Having an artistic sort of competition, like an art show or something, to let your players sort of be creative and ask them, like, what did you create? What does this represent to you? I think it would be an interesting way, because stone giants are somewhat imposing. They're like the cavemen of giants, but when they then come down and they're more of a emotional being than they are anything else, I think that'd be a really interesting way to approach them.
Oh yeah, because they are
yeah.
stone giants are incredibly artistic. Like that's the thing
Correct.
that they sell themselves solely to. So even just to, like you were saying, ask them like, what is beauty? What is, like, maybe it's even this depends on your party, but every party has to take, one of their members and write an epic poem about them, or you have to do something like that, which is different. Yeah, but I don't think at some point too, you have to understand, like, you can't necessarily judge a party's ability to write actual poetry and music, because some of your guys might be like, I can't write no song.
Right. But if you present with them with it, like, just the opportunity to be artistic in any way that they feel,
yeah,
it could be interesting to see, even if some of them don't take it very seriously and they're just more like, I pick up a rock and I shove a stick through it, and now I got a rock on a stick.
Rock on a stick. But it could even be to just give them the hero's journey, and you give them that Dan Harmon circle, and you say, hey, fill this in for your party. Like, before you can create a story, like, let's see if you can track your own story and the things that are important that have happened along your path, the defining moments.
That's a really cool thing.
Like the self-awareness
like
of an artist. Which that could be even something you could tie into art. Is art was the self-aware, like stone giants are above these other fighting races because they are more self-aware, because they're artistic, and I don't know. But I like I like how it's not so monotonous. It's not just, we fight a different thing.
Right. No, it sort of, because these are imposing creatures, right? So these are. There's moments where your players are like tensed up, we're ready to go, I'm ready to fight this damn thing, and then when they slowly start to present a more, for lack of a better word, human side to their emotion, it can be quite the shift for your players in terms of how they were originally going to think about this whole thing.
Yeah. Now, something we didn't talk about necessarily is this artifact they get. And I was just kind of flipping the DMG. I don't think this is necessarily the best idea, but just some ideas to get you guys out there's brains, thinking about your own ideas.
Yeah. You could always go to the D&D Annex on Molly's Twitch or Twitter.
Yeah, fill in these ideas. He'll help you out. But there's a item in the DMG called the Rod of Lordly Might. And it has, I believe, 6 buttons on it, or maybe more. But I was thinking maybe instead of these 6 buttons being individual, like for this item, they're all on one item, and you press a button and that's what the rod becomes. Maybe it's more of you get 6 rings, or you get 6 things, whatever. So every party member or more party members can have a piece of this trial. But the 6 buttons that you can press, the first button, the rod becomes a flame tongue or a fiery blade, essentially. So it just does more damage. The second button is the rod's mace head folds down into 2 crescent-shaped blades, forming a battle axe, a magical battle axe that grants a +3. So it's once again different weapon type. Then button 3 is its head. The mace head forms a pole or a spear. So it becomes a magic spear, granting a +3. The fourth button, it transforms into a 50-foot climbing pole that can bear like 4,000 pounds. The fifth button, it transforms into a battering ram. The sixth button, I don't like this. The more I read through it, it turns into a item that fixes itself in place.
You know what you could do, though, is you could turn that, you could sort of mess with that item and have each of the 6 different actions that comes from it represent each of the types of the giants.
Ooh,
themselves.
I like that.
You know what I mean?
Yep. Or even like a yeah. Keep going.
You could like fly. You could fly on a floating cloud appears beneath the rod, and now you have the ability to fly for an hour, or on this cloud, or you have like the storm thing, and it can summon any storm that you wish up for 1 hour, or it becomes a mallet for the stone giants, something like that.
Yeah.
So it's more representative, and you can mess with the stats on it, because stats are always difficult to balance. But you could still do that item while still maintaining that. I was actually looking at some of the other things that are like specifically based around giants, but one of them is the Giant Slayer, and I was like, why would a giant give you an axe that could kill them faster? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Makes perfect sense. Duh.
He's all. I really hate my life. Please end it.
Take this. Kill me.
But there was also the giant potions. Have you seen those?
Yeah, the potions of giant strength.
Yeah, so they could provide those to your players as well, which I thought would be pretty interesting. Depending on like if the hill giant or something, I don't know. Those are some ideas definitely that I think are pretty cool that fall in place with the giants themselves. So
yeah,
I liked your idea of the item up front personally. So don't be so hard on yourself.
Okay,
there, bud.
Thanks, I appreciate it. But I like that. So the gap that we've had them fill in this old legend is more that they are creating their own legend. But I do like the idea of this flying castle. Oh, let's do this before we get too far. Okay. We never really talked about the different biomes. We talked about what the trials are, but besides the hill giant, which is like the easy, you just go there, we didn't talk too much about how you get to these different islands. We talked very briefly, so let me ask you. I think I commented a little bit on some of my ideas. For these different, giants, we've got fire, frost, stone, and storm. How do they get to these different flying islands? What are the challenges that keep them from getting there easily?
I think one of them would be for the storm giant, for example, would be gust of wind that continue to rise higher and higher. It's sort of like if you were to hold a parachute over your head and then the gust of wind comes through the parachute. Sort of if you think, like in Legend of Zelda.
Yep.
And so you're having to traverse these. You're essentially having to have your players fly through this storm as they make their way to this platform from the storm giants.
Kind of like getting to the eye of the storm type thing.
Correct. Yeah, and then they fly through, and it's like a bright sunny day inside of the eye of the storm, but they've had to fly through it using these different, that's part of the trial is getting there in the first place.
That could be a cool one too for if you wanted to have a hopping from rock to rock moment. Like maybe you fly your mounts in there or whatever, and then you get one of your players could get knocked off, and now they're trying to fly and jump from one giant rock to another giant rock or
right. I like in terms of the stone giants themselves. The thing that I thought of with them would be that I was actually thinking of floating rocks as well for them. But those floating rocks have chains in between each of them.
Ooh, I like that.
And that's sort of to me from a metaphorical perspective. I guess it sort of represents the unity and strength of understanding that they're a creative bunch, and yet they still hold on to those ideas. They're chained to those ideas and that creativity. What
if it's an idea? What if for the stone giants? What if they're like not strictly flying? What if it's kind of like chandelier-esque? Like these giant.
Oh, and it's like swinging.
Yeah. Yep. But I think for that one too, you have to have like some kind of flying bats in that cave. That way they're like swinging from cave to cave, but as they're flying through, there's these giant bats that are flying down at them and trying to hit them or grab them out of the air.
Right. There's part of me that wants to do like ice slides, sort of like Circa Batman, the Mr. Freeze, Arnold Schwarzenegger type, where there's like ice skating involved, and so they're using their momentum to sort of ramp from one position to the next until they're able to make it to the main platform of the ice giants main castle or island of sorts or something like that. That was one. I mean, just aesthetically speaking, the hanging platform in the middle of a volcano with these chains that are sort of holding it in place, I mean, it has to happen.
Oh, yeah. For the fire giants.
Yeah, it's like 5 different chains, and they're just like sort of just sitting there just jutting out from either side,
What if-
all holding on, like latched onto the volcano.
What if one of them too? I think we're picturing, and this is another thing to bring into it. We're picturing too that you're going horizontally to get to this other flying castle, like you're just going from a horizontal plane. What if for some of these you had to drop down? So imagine like the storm giant thing with the hurricane, but maybe it is you fly above the storm and you have to drop down into it, but still the storm is moving, so you're getting like swept into parts of it. Or what if for the fire giant you're dropping down into the smoke and you're kind of like, parachuting / free falling down through the smoke, or even for the frost you're doing something like that where you're falling through the snowstorm. I don't know if it's the best idea. It's just a different way of making it so it's not always a horizontal journey. Maybe sometimes you do like more of you've got to jump and see if you can get down there.
Right. No, that's a big one right there. Because adding verticality can be difficult to help your players perceive. Because without physically seeing it, it's just difficult at times. But when you are able to give them sort of like a footage or meters of how high a jump might be or what they have to do to get from one place to another. An episode that reminds me of verticality a lot was the Charge the Batteries episode.
Yeah.
We'd sort of talked about it in that episode.
Yep.
So that's definitely something that I could see come into play there as well. So we've done all that, right? And we've gone through the different scenarios and the player events and all that. What about what when you get back after you've received your item or you've received the thing? What happens? Like, how can we connect this to maybe some other storylines or sort of weave this into other tales?
Like a what next moment?
Yeah, it's like, okay, cool, we did it. Now what?
Well, I mean, it could be that this giant becomes. Once again, it could be something where maybe they're going on these trials for the ordning because there is some different artifact at the end, and this cloud giant becomes like a hey, gotcha moment. I made you do this for me.
Right.
It could be that maybe this is kind of like a hey, pause. We're going to go on this quest, and I'm going to judge you guys as being worthy adventurers or not. And now they go on their way with this cloud giant's blessing. And it's kind of like the cloud giant gives them like a metaphorical tip of the hat, like, go get them, guys. I'm believing in you. Like, you guys have proved yourself.
Right.
It could be that maybe maybe they're sent to this cloud giant. Like, maybe this king or this organization that they work for says, like, hey, you guys have gotten to the point where, it's time for you to prove. Very Fable-esque once again. Like, it's time for you to take your hero trial, or it's time for you to see what type of hero you guys are going to be. So we're going to send you guys. We've sent other hero parties on this quest. It's time for you to go meet this guy and see how you do on the trial.
Yeah. It could be your Rocky montage, like what you talked about earlier.
Yep.
It could be the players like da da da. I can do it, Mac, and then got me back. I like it though. I think that's the way that you go with this is actually like sort of using this as a side quest of sorts.
Yeah,
side quest.
A side quest / like a proving point for your party.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a moment for your players to like look back at the legend that they've already become.
Exactly,
like you said earlier. And that's where we tied in both, right? We've gotten the legend, the filling in the gaps to an old legend, and we've incorporated the flying castle of the giant that is made of clouds. So I think I think we did it. So. Let me do a quick summary breakdown, real quick, of the whole thing,
okay,
and then we can get into your synopsis.
It's my week for the synopsis. Cool. Okay, I'll brainstorm while you go through.
So essentially, what we've created is at this point right now, you're in a kingdom that has presented you with an opportunity to go and learn from this cloud giant, and the cloud giant has now taken you under their cloudy wing and has pushed you along to go through the trials through the trials of the giants. And you are essentially trying to learn of this old legend, but you start to realize that it's your own legend that you're creating at this time. This is what you have been filling in the gaps all this time. You're starting to do this while you fly from location to location on this Cloud Giant's castle. You start to gain an understanding of the ordning. Is that what it's called, right?
Yep.
For the Giants?
Yep, ordning.
Yep. Yay.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Got him. So as you learn, you start to gain more strength and understanding around their culture, and you start to gather sort of a respect for it all. And then at the very end, you've created your own legend and have learned something along the way. And your Cloud Giant friend now, yes, your friend. Her name is Jessica.
Ooh,
Jessica the Cloud Giant. Hi, hey, it's me, Jessica. Hi. Yeah, no, Jessica's like an HR employee. Hi. Yes.
It's Jessica here with Cloud Insurance. I want to let you know that you are eligible
for a really quick, fun, and exciting trial of the Giants. So, if you wouldn't mind hopping on my little soft cloud.
Thanks for choosing Cloud Fall Insurance. When you fall, best to fall on the cloud.
Hey, that's what we say here.
Or we help you
Cloudical
find the
Insurance.
silver lining. That's my story synopsis.
Are you? Yeah. Your flow from Progressive, but a Cloud Giant.
Yes.
Oh man. So yeah, but that's pretty much it.
Cool.
So did I provide you enough time to do a synopsis?
All right. Yes, you did. I'm going to take more of the beginning. So it's not a synopsis of the whole story, but just a scene I see from the very beginning.
Yes, a synopsis.
Synopsis. I like that. Okay, but here we go. So your party has, after the services that they've done to the local kingdom, to the local region, they have been sent by word of a mentor of theirs to go and participate in the Trial of Legends. As they've climbed up this isolated mountain peak for maybe several days, they see at the top that the peak is surrounded by clouds, and as they step up through the clouds, they see above it is a floating crag, a floating stone. The stone stops down and brings itself closer, and stepping off from one stone to the mountaintop you're on is this weathered and ancient-looking Cloud Giant. His beard, a wisp around his chin, and his hair forms like a low-hanging cloud down over his brow. As he leans down and faces your party, he measures you up. He looks up, down. He takes in your whole composure, the way you are standing. He says nothing, and then eventually he takes a deep breath in through his nostrils and breathes out and says,
I wonder what your legend will be.
Before stepping back onto the castle, turning and giving you a hand gesture to follow him up. But yeah, that's what I got.
I love it. I love it. I like it that he's like silent while he's sort of observing them, going like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I like that idea of the whole time, him kind of being like Yoda-esque, but he's like, I have trained, or I have taken countless heroes through these trials, and then he can kind of provide like, I've never seen a party handle it that way, or he even just gets like angry, like, I can't believe you would fall into such hubris to be so blunt, or He kind of seems like,
and then he gets on Luke's back, and Luke does like triple backflips with a 18-foot giant on his back.
Yep. Giant Luke Skywalker. I love.
He is Yoda, Jessica, the insurance agent from Cloudical Insurance.
Did you say Cloudical Insurance? I love this idea of Cloudfall Insurance. I'm gonna make this a thing in one of my sessions. That's like
is it Cloudfall or is it Cloudical?
I like
because
both.
I thought you said Cloudical.
I like both.
No, they're competing insurance brands.
Yes, it's like Geico.
Have you been
and
using
Progressive.
Cloudfall Insurance? Well, they're crap. How about try out Cloudical Insurance?
Are you in good hands?
Actually, every single one of the giants all
Has
tries
their
to
own
pitch you.
insurance company.
Yeah, they all try to pitch you a relative form
Restart
of
the
insurance.
whole episode. We're going back to this. This is the new thing.
This is an insurance-based episode, everybody. I hope you don't mind. That was a fun one, man. That was a cool little episode.
Yeah, it was kind of different.
It definitely it was provoking the theater of my mind. To say
That is one thing I do love about
enjoying it.
giants. Giants are so easy to grasp onto. I think I think your players, you don't have to explain giants well. When you say giants, they just conjure these images already in people's minds. So a session like this is a really good like imagination session. Like your players are going to be there with you as you explain these things. And I like the idea too of it not just being that these trials are Smash based, but that it's kind of like you let them play essentially different types of video games for every trial, like a city builder or a sim or a war game.
You're playing Sim City and you're dealing with the natural disasters on the storm giants.
That's pretty much what it is. Yeah. I love that though.
Oh no, what are you going to do? Aliens are blowing up your city. He's like, you better figure it out. And guys, just a reminder, do you have storm care insurance? I just wanted to make sure, one last try.
Are you in good hands?
See? Exactly.
But cool.
Oh, man.
Well, guys, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode.
Yeah.
We'd love to hear if you guys have any ideas that you think would be great for these trials. Please feel free. Cam will let you know how to follow us on all the social medias. But once again, before he says that, we now have 2 open spots on our theme and scenarios list. So if you guys have any ideas for themes or scenarios as well, please shoot them to us on social media. We would love to hear what are some things that you'd like us to brainstorm about. Cam, how can the good people get a hold of us if they need to?
Rich's phone number is...
Yes.
No.
My personal address
you can find
is...
And social security number is, and credit
Just
card.
for good measure.
Yeah, you know what, guys? You own his life if you want it. Here it is. You can find us on Twitter. Twitter is a lot of fun. We are slowly but surely growing over there. You can find us at Filling in the Gaps. You can also tweet at us with any ideas, any scenarios or themes that you may have with the hashtag FITG. That's going to be a lot of fun. We have our Instagram that posts pictures every once in a while about our different episodes. We have our Reddit, which has been a great time. Vrectorum has done a great job of moderating over there and helping us sort of create some consistent posts. We are bugging the hell out of the Dungeons and Dragons and D&D subreddits as well by posting our episodes weekly. So I hope that no one gets tired of seeing that, but that's the only way we can get the voice out. And if y'all enjoy what we do, please share it with your friends. Let people know, because that's about the only way we can really advertise. And it really does help us out immensely if you have the opportunity to leave us a review, or if you've been thinking about leaving us a review. It's about that time to head over to iTunes and just type in a few nice words and say, like, Rich and Cam are 2 of the greatest human beings I've ever heard in my life. And then drop a little 5-star and send us about $35,000. And that's
awesome.
all you got to do.
That's it.
That's
it's
all,
not
all
that
you got
hard
to do.
to be one of our fans. Okay? Just kidding.
It's just a mortgage. That's all. That's all it is. We also have a fun little Discord as well, where we discuss the podcast. We discuss different stories. We discuss some of our own personal games. And we have a lot of fun having that conversation over there as well. A lot of sharing, a lot of happiness, and a lot of joy.
Yeah, it's just a great brainstorming thing for your own sessions. Like, a lot of people bring their own, like, hey, this is an idea I have. Like, what do you guys think?
It's really a lot of fun. Yeah, it really is great.
But thanks so much, guys, for listening to this episode. I hope you guys got some good ideas off of it. Like Cam said, get a hold of us, talk to us. We'd love to hear what ideas you have. When we get to 25 reviews on iTunes, we'll also be doing a free dice set giveaway brought to you once again by Libris Arcana Dice. Make sure you guys check those out. We know that DMing can be hard, but we hope that you guys have gotten some kind of brainstorming spark to help you guys fill in the gaps during your next game night. Until next episode, we hope you guys have good fun at your table. Peace out.